Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to Watchbox and thanks for logging on. Today we have another luxury watch comparison. A watch comparison that is only possible in the world of pre-owned because these watches are no longer manufactured in the form you see them here. On the left we have the Patek Philippe Calatrava 5296G001. This is the original variant launched in 2005. And we have the Vacheron Constantin Traditionnelle self-winding 87172. This model was launched back in 2008 as the Patrimony Traditionnelle. Today, these watches are perfectly matched. White gold, automatic, 3 hands and a date, both 38 millimeters, but worlds apart in terms of detail distinctions. So let's start with a competition led by the established champion, Patek Philippe. This style over the years has come to be known as Calatrava after the logo of the Patek Philippe company, the Calatrava cross. Now what you see here is the earliest version of the 5296. It's launched in 2005 with the highly regarded and long discontinued sector dial, a combination of silver white and more of a silver gray. You can see there are also blue elements including numerals, indices, calibrations, and the so-called sectors that break this dial up into segments. Hands, as you can see, fired with a lovely blue tone, leaf style or feuille hands for the hours and minutes, and then a counterweighted lancet style seconds handle. Let's take a quick look at this watch on the wrist. Easy to wear, I have to say. Both of these are wonderfully compact. This watch is 38 millimeters in diameter. It's only 8.9 millimeters thick, and you can see how eager it is to slip under my cuff right here. From lug tip to lug tip, 45.8 millimeters, a wonderfully compact fit that makes this watch a viable unisex option. And then a surprisingly broad 21 millimeters between the lugs. Given the size of the case and the lug-to-lug span, that's a very broad stance for a watch with borderline traditional dimensions. So you can see that proportion is not traditional, but everything else about this watch really is, and it wears beautifully with no overlap of lugs across my wrist. Taking a quick look at the strap, you can see large rectangular scale, symmetrical scale alligator leather, dark blue, high gloss, monotone stitch, sheer cut edge, calfskin on the bottom, brand new Patek Philippe factory strap. You can see Patek is today incorporating pull tab spring bars, so you can quickly and easily remove that strap without tools. And then we've got a matching white gold faceted and polished spade style pin buckle. And taking a quick look at the case, it's very simple. The whole Calatrava look dates back to the 1932 reference 96, and the 5296 reference of this watch actually references that heritage. This is part of that continuity. Now, the original one would have had no date. It would have been manual wind. It would have been 2 hands at center with small seconds, but it's the case design here that really maintains that continuity with these lovely blended profile lugs. You can also see that the bezel has a vertical segment. It's stepped inboard somewhat to visually thin out the case, and then while it's conical, it's almost completely flat with a slightly chamfered crystal over that lovely sector dial. Now flip it all upside down. You can see a variant of Patek Philippe's 324 automatic unidirectional winding, ceramic rotor bearings, 45-hour power reserve. It's actually 35 to 45, depending on where the date turn is in the power curve. If you're running out of power reserve right around midnight, it could stop 35 hours. If you're nowhere near the date change, it could run for as long as 45. That's why Patek Philippe gives you a range. There's no hacking, but there is a quick set date. You can see we've got one of the later versions of this movement in this model, as it has the Patek Philippe seal that was only available from mid-2009 on, and then it features a later 6-position adjustment with the anti-magnetic silicone hairspring. It's got a 4 hertz beat rate, it's got the anti-magnetic hairspring, a free-sprung gyromax style balance, and as you can see, a 29 jewel movement that is nicely finished, combination of mechanical and manual, but in particular it's the manual finishing of the bevels. They're started mechanically, but they're finished manually, typically with a drill bit style tool with a buffer, and that's how that's achieved. A good looking movement all around and reasonably sized relative to this case. It's a good match, hand in glove, so to speak. Now we'll take a look at the Vacheron. The Vacheron as a model, the 87172 launched back at SIHH in 2008. So this is also a veteran here. It's a watch that's been around for a while. It's still in the catalog today, albeit not in white gold. The 5296, the Patek, has already been discontinued. This model you see here is white gold, 38 in diameter, 8.2 millimeters thick, so slightly thinner than the Patek. 45.6 millimeters lug to lug, almost exactly the same. This has a more traditional 20 millimeter spacing between the lugs. Now, taking a look, you can see that the case design is a little bit more complex with stepped lugs, coining on the case back, and an inward fluting. Taking a quick look, the bezel here is just as flat, and then it has an even more pronounced inboard step from the case flank. And whereas Patek has the Calatrava cross on its crown, here we have the Maltese cross, which is the symbol of Vacheron. We'll throw this on my wrist. It's an easy watch to wear. Really, both of them are. Both of these watches are unisex. Both of them are elegant. Both of them are fairly traditional. Both of them fit underneath the cuff. You can see this watch on the wrist a little bit more monotone than the Patek, as there are no color elements on the dial. It's very cool. It's very austere. Taking a quick look, you can see how thin it is and that the lugs come nowhere near the edge of my wrist. The strap here is actually large rectangular scale alligator leather in black, but it's a matte finish. We have here a sheer cut side, just like the Patek, that shows the layers of leather. Then a monotone stitch, calfskin on the bottom, also a factory strap. Now, one difference here is that we don't have the pull tab spring bars to quickly and easily remove the strap, but that's not intrinsic to the watch. If you wanted, you could fit that kind of strap to the case. What is intrinsic is that you order a curved spring bar here so that Vacheron can drill the lugs closer to the case with no impediment to the motion of the strap. Here too we have a pin buckle. Instead of that spade style design, here we have in white gold a Maltese cross style buckle. Rolling back around to the case, you can see, as with the Patek, everything is of high polish, and as with the Patek, I'll take a quick look so you can see them side by side. It's not the easiest thing to discern unless the watches are adjacent. But you can see here that the use of white gold is similar. It's gray gold in both cases. And that just means that this is not the rhodium-plated variety of white gold. Taking a quick look at the Vacheron, you can see that the dial is more upscale than the Patek. Everything on the Patek dial is printed, which means that it's basically transferred. And here we have applied solid blocks of gold that are faceted with a combination of satin and polish on the Dauphine hands at center. And then you can see that the individual indices themselves have been faceted to create razor-like polished mirrored slivers along their sides as well as across their tops. This is a more expensive way to make a dial. You can also see that whereas the Patek Philippe has a sheer cut straight through the dial, it's simply a window over the date disc. Vacheron's a bit more subtle, and you can see how the date window is stepped down, so it's not just an abrupt, crude, sheer cut through the dial. You can also see that the small seconds here is actually downwardly stepped, and then the center has a concentric pattern. We also have an applied logo, and you'll note that Vacheron writes out its name smaller than Patek, so points for modesty. The richness of these applied white gold indices, the quality of these half-frosted hands, the attention to detail with the logo, the stepped date window, and the small seconds sets this watch apart. Now, turning it all over, you could see that the movement includes a 22-karat mass. Patek is not clear about what gold purity is used here, but Vacheron has made no compromises. You won't find a more pure gold used in a winding mass than 22 karat, not on a center rotor automatic. You can also see here that we have a beveling along the edge of the rotor. We have media blasting as well as polish on the name track. The outboard track, the outermost portion, features a lapping machine brushed pattern, and then we have this lovely roselet, the guilloche. So the detailing of the Vacheron rotor is to a much higher degree of detail than you'll find on the Patek. Now, taking a quick look at the movement itself, this is the 2455. It's a Vacheron automatic winder. Like the Patek, it's a unidirectional winder with ceramic rotor bearings for greater efficiency. Like the Patek, it has a quick set date. Like the Patek, it features a 4 Hz beat rate. Now, the Patek is adjusted in 6 positions. This is adjusted in 5. But this also has a feature the Patek does not have, which is a hacking seconds system. So you can actually stop the seconds hand, stop the balance, and set the watch to a reference time. All this pivoting on 27 joules. The finishing is to a high grade. made. And there are some things done here in greater abundance than you'll find on the Patek, such as the use of more black polished locating pegs. You can see these little almost like flattened pinheads. Those are used to help locate the bridges on the base plate, and they're all black polished on their top. Now the Patek has that, it just doesn't have a lot of them. You can see here on the balance cock there are 3 of those little polished pegs. And then another thing that sets the Vacheron apart, in my opinion, is that the stripes are a little bit narrower and their color gradient is a little bit more pronounced, whereas if you look at the Patek, the stripes don't appear to have quite the same color gradient from side to side, and they appear just a little bit broader. So that does matter. You can also see that architecturally this movement's a bit more interesting to look at, as the bridges have been broken up into several individual structures. You can also see the Geneva hallmark attesting to the quality of the movement's finish. Here we have the Patek Philippe seal, which is no less in quality, but you can see that Patek uses a rather large and unappealing mono bridge over the barrel, so it's just not as interesting to look at. So subjectively, a little bit of an advantage for the Vacheron there. Now let's talk about advantages for each of these watches relative to each other. Well, the Patek is, I would say, a more charismatic dial by far. It doesn't seem austere, it doesn't seem frigid, cold, or bare. It seems very charismatic with the combination of the sector design, the 2 tones of silver, and the blue color elements. Also brand prestige. Vacheron is Holy Trinity, but Patek is arguably the peak of that triad. And so in terms of having the one that signals to the status conscious that you've arrived, not an important consideration for me when buying my luxury watches, but I know some people do take it into account, and this watch has that factor. Also, greater anti-magnetism. We can argue about the long-term serviceability of silicone hairsprings, but there's no argument that in the short run, they make this watch much more resistant to magnetism, and that's ever more present with the high-powered electronics we have in the home and the office. We also have 6-position adjustment, the Patek Philippe seal, the Gyromax free-sprung balance, and in combination with the silicone hairspring, all of those features add up to Patek guaranteeing this watch will run no worse than -3 + 2 seconds when adjusted from the factory. Vacheron makes no specific claims about accuracy, so advantage Patek. Also, here's a timeless model line. We were talking about how the design goes back to the 1932 reference 96. This is a look that's going to stand the test of time. Even the dial is drawn from Patek's history. So if you want something with enduring beauty that will always be good looking and will stand out in any era, well, this is that watch. Whereas the Vacheron, it's one of many different designs that Vacheron spits out, and while it's been in the catalog for a long time, I can't really argue that it's one of their all-time classics, whereas this, especially with this style, really is. It's also a lot easier to read as there's greater contrast, and I find with the Vacheron, in some lights from some angles, it can be a bit of a challenge to see silver on silver, not a problem with the dark on silver right here. Now, talking about the Vacheron, here the dial quality, everything from the applied logo to the sub-seconds detailing, the applied indices, the stepped date window, the quality of the dial is just higher in every way. More money and more time, both spent here. Hacking seconds, it's a big deal for me. What good is a watch with guaranteed accuracy if it's such a pain in the butt to synchronize it to a reference time? And you'll probably have noted when I started the video, these two things were synchronized. It was not easy to do. If both of them hacked like the Vacheron, it would have been a lot easier. Also, a more attractive price. You want to buy this used, this is going to be about $27,000 to $30,000 used, whereas this is going to be, as you see, at about $18,000 to $19,000 used. So for an equivalent watch, you're paying a lot less money. I would also say that it's thinner. It's not thinner by a lot, but remember I was showing you the similarity in the tone of the gray gold a minute ago. You could see that the Vacheron is just a little bit thinner. Granted, it's just north of 0.5 millimeter, but then again, we are talking about dress watches and these things matter. I would also say realistically, this is a watch with a more attractive movement architecture with more wheels visible, more bevels bared, a more interesting arrangement of bridge shapes and structures, and of course we have superior rotor finish, and to a high degree it's a large margin of superiority. So if I were to choose which one I would wear every day, it would be the Patek Philippe, because I think that you fall in love with dials and I've fallen in love with this one. But if you want the watch that's objectively objectively better, it's going to be the Vacheron. Never mind the price. Movement, dial, even the case detail, the Vacheron has it all over the Patek. The key difference here is just going to be this unbeatable sector dial. Maybe Vacheron is just one change away from making this an instant classic, but Patek Philippe is already there. Reach out to me in the description below. Let me know which of these two you would prefer. Time out, Tim out. Thanks for logging on.